Turns out not having Darryn Peterson, it kind of sucks. It hurt the KU offense. They lose to UConn. We break down what went wrong for the Jayhawks.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. We are recapping Kansas UConn. They fall by 5 at home in Allen Fieldhouse as a dreadful second half on offense and on the glass ends up dooming KU in the end without Darryn Peterson. Obviously, no Taris Reed as well for Connecticut. We're going to break it all down on today's episode. What went wrong for KU? What does this all mean? What are the positives, negatives from the game? We'll get to game awards and what's next for KU. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your first NFL or place your NFL live bets all season long. So Kansas drops 61-56. And, honestly, coming in, if you would have said UConn was going to score 61 points, you obviously felt like you would have a shot to win the game. And then if I told you that and that KU had 33 in the first half, you'd think, okay, that target number seems pretty doable for the second half. But the second half offense exploded for KU. They finished one of their last 8, but it didn't start much better for KU in the second half. And at the end of the day, the offense just wasn't able to do enough. You certainly missed Darryn Peterson. You shot 35% from the field. You were 5 of 18 from 3. You did get to the foul line, but you weren't getting enough offensive rebounds. You weren't getting enough second chance points. You weren't scoring inside. And it was just kind of a combination of everything. Like Trey White had a down game. He had just 8 points after coming in with a bunch of straight good games. For Bryson Tiller, he goes just 2 of 8 from the floor with 4 points. Flory Bidunga had another, not great offensive game, going just 4 of 9 from the floor. You didn't really get much of anything from, you got the one dunk from Cole Rosario, but 2 points combined from Dawson and Rosario, which without Darryn Peterson, you're counting on those guys to get you more than 2 points. And so the combination of those things, the poor shooting, the poor offensive execution, the inability to score inside, that is kind of the storyline. But if I'm being completely honest, that's not the thing that I really take away from this game. What have we talked about all season, all off season, whatever? This is not a team whose identity is a run and gun offensive team. This is a defensive team that you want to muck up games, win on the margins, and have a #1 draft pick in Darryn Peterson leading the way. Well, you didn't have Peterson leading the way tonight. You did kind of muck up the game. You forced UConn to 61 points. UConn is one of the best offenses in the country. And I know UConn, got a little better offensively in the second half, but they still shot just 42%. I'll be honest, I still feel really good about this KU defense. I still feel good about this Kansas team, even after another loss. The issue here is, I think, obviously very different, the result. You got blown out by North Carolina in the second half. This one ends up being a close loss. But I think kind of similar in the same vein that I walk away from the Carolina loss. Like, this is kind of a mix of the Duke and the Carolina loss, kind of a mix of the Duke one, because you come away from it without Darryn Peterson going, okay, you played a good team close, like you played them well. But I also walk away from it from the North Carolina game where it's like there were moments in the second half in the North Carolina game where it felt like you weren't playing to your identity. It felt like you weren't playing to the identity of being more of a defensive team in the second half. And in this one, you did play to the identity of being a defensive team. You just didn't play to the accompanying part of that, which is doing the little things. One of those would be rebounding. And so I know the offense is going to rule the day and going to be the calling card and everything. Here's the thing. 1, UConn's a really good team who is good on offense and on defense. 2, you did not have a good offensive game. We don't need to make any mistakes about that. Even for your standards, this was not a good offensive game, but also you were without Darryn Peterson. But also that's kind of what this team is going to be this year. It's going to be a very inconsistent offensive team. That's how you built this team. That is the player personnel of this team. I'm not overly concerned about what we saw on the offensive end, right? I know that sounds silly. Like, yes, if you told me they're going to shoot 35% every game, I'd be concerned. But the thing to me is this game was still within reach of winning if you would have rebounded the ball better in the second half, because UConn ends up scoring 14 second chance points. They outscored you 14-5 in second chance points. That's a 9-point difference. You lost by 5. And we mentioned coming in, UConn in their big games this year, right? Whether it's the 2 exhibitions against, Boston College and Michigan State, whether it was the games against like Arizona and Illinois and so on, did not have good offensive and defensive rebound rate numbers. And yet you let them get into this in the second half, specifically with the offensive rebounding. So you look at the first half, UConn had 3 offensive rebounds. KU had 15 defensive rebounds. Kansas was doing an excellent job in the first half on the defensive glass, right? That means they're getting 5 of every 6. It's a very good defensive rebound rate. But in the second half, UConn wound up with 8 offensive rebounds. Kansas wound up with 6 defensive rebounds. Or excuse me, sorry. I had 8 defensive rebounds. 8 defensive rebounds in the second half. So they had as many offensive rebounds in the second half as you had defensive rebounds. 1 of every 2 misses they're picking up, right? If you cut that number in half, if you get it down to 4 of the as opposed to the 8, I don't think they win the game. And so again, you do want to figure out the offense. I'm not trying to say that, it's a loss, or like you do want to figure it out. And there are certain things you need to be better at. And obviously adding Darryn Peterson to the fold would certainly help in that area. But again, for me, the expectation is that this is kind of what that team is. This is the identity. So you need to find other ways to win. You need to understand that, hey, we're not going to be the team that beats you by outscoring you. So we need to win on the glass. We need to win on the defensive end. And that was what was disappointing in this one for me, that you did get kind of worked in the second half on the glass. Now, I think besides that, the other biggest negatives from this one, like I mentioned, Flory struggling offensively for the second straight. Just not really getting much from the 2 big lineup offensively in this one, right? You get just 15 combined points on 6 of 17 shooting from the 2 bigs. I don't know. Is it just me, or are we seeing, like, you see a decent amount of possessions where Flory gets the ball on the block or posted up or whatever? Why are we not seeing more of that with Bryson Tiller? Because isn't the idea that Tiller's the offensive big with the finesse, whereas Flory's more of the rebounding and defensive big? Like, should we be seeing more of Tiller on the block? I feel like most of the shots we're seeing Tiller take right now are like either threes or in transition or off a pick and roll or something like that. Like, I don't know. Should he be getting the ball more on the block, like back to the basket, or he can face up? I don't know. Just kind of a quick thought there. Obviously, the offense overall, the defensive rebounding were not great in this game. I do think it's also, where Jaden Dawson and Cole Rosario, are they out of the trust tree already for Bill Self? They weren't in the game at the end when you were down 3 with the ball with a chance to tie. You needed a 3. And I mean, they ended up kind of driving, which, that was fine. If you would have ended up scoring on a drive and then you foul them and, a 1-and-1, like, who knows? But they weren't even in the game. So some of these early moment games can really tell us who is in the trust tree. And I think it's pretty clear which guys are kind of in that situation. Now, I will say, just ending with a little bit of a positive, I think it was exciting to see kind of a backup performance from Elmarko Jackson. It wasn't as good as the Tennessee game, but he still wound up with 11 points. He was 4 of 9 from the floor. He hit the 2 threes for the game. And I know Elmarko had that hot stretch at the beginning that fueled that. But one of the things that I really appreciated there was, Elmarko missed his first shot, and a younger Elmarko misses his first shot, and then that might be his only shot he takes in the next 10 minutes. He immediately shot afterwards and was aggressive shooting after that. And even in the second half, like, it's not just the aggressiveness to shoot the ball, it's the aggressiveness to drive the ball for a dude that's that athletic. And he was driving in the second half. He was getting to the free throw line a little bit. I know he split that one pair at the free throw line. I know he missed just 1 of 3 on the free throws. He missed the and 1 free throw opportunity. That's another thing. Like, if you're Kansas, okay, the shooting is going to come and go for this team with this personnel. You can't afford to miss some of those clutch free throws and have some of the rebounding issues. But point being, I appreciated the aggressiveness, and I feel good that Elmarko's now done this in kind of back-to-back games. Like I said, I feel good about the defense still. You held UConn to 61 points, and especially if you look at just the first shot defense, it was pretty excellent for KU. And again, I think the bottom line here is this. You can't keep doing this. I can't keep giving the spiel about like, oh, you played a good team close, so it shows what this team can be. Because eventually you hit a point where that runs dry. I don't think we've hit that point yet. It's Duke and UConn, who are two of the 5 best teams in the country, and both of them without Darryn Peterson. I still feel good about this Kansas team where they are. I still like the players on this team. I still feel like they are, when they're losing games, it's because of either skill related things, like they just don't have, shooting or scoring or offense or whatever, but it's not because they're not trying. It's not because they're just completely running rampant on what Bill Self wants them to do. I just kind of view it as like, okay, you've been beaten a couple times by teams who are more talented than you. And when you don't have Darryn Peterson, that's going to be the case. But when you get Peterson back, like if Peterson plays, yeah, I think Kansas wins this game. Now, if Taris Reed plays and Peterson plays, then maybe it's back to more of a coin flip, though. Obviously, Peterson, who's projected to be the number 1 pick in the draft, Reed, who's not projected to be the number 1 pick in the draft. I think Peterson probably has a little bit bigger value to his team, especially knowing how important he is to the KU offense, which we saw point blank in this game. So I do think they win the game with Darryn Peterson, which also adds to the frustration that he didn't play, obviously. But if this leads to Peterson being healthy for the final stretch and the final push of the season, it is all going to be worth it. And I looked like Houston last year. They played for the national title game, and maybe they should have won the national title. They had 3 losses around this point of the season as well, right? I think they lost 2 or 3 games in the players era last year, and they ended up being just okay. Now you have to learn your lesson. You have to find that right balance of kind of getting hot. Yeah, they were 4-3, right? And that doesn't mean every 3-loss team through this point is going to figure that out. You've got some tough games kind of coming up here with Missouri and NC State, who aren't the Duke and UConn elite, but are still good teams that should be tournament teams to kind of prove your worth again. Will Peterson come back? It's going to be huge, and this team really needs it. And I think you saw why tonight, but still some positives, still some negatives. I think we've just continued to dig into what this team exactly is through some of these games, and some positives. Also, you lost the game though, and this is Kansas basketball. All right, let's get to our game awards next. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. And at FanDuel, NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. Keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com, place your live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Thanks for joining us and making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. Thank you to everydayers catching each and every episode of the show. Okay, moments of the game. For a little there, like the Jamari McDowell first half step back 3, that was super fun. The Elmarko Jackson a kind of first half run and the little jolt that he went on. Those are really fun moments for KU. When it felt like you were going to start to make a comeback, like the Flory one-handed alley-oop that made it 55-51, which I don't know why that wasn't a foul. That was really cool. The Melvin Council 3 to make it 55-54, it kind of felt like, okay, are you going to do to UConn what you did last time you hosted them, where you kind of make this late comeback to win this game? But obviously in the end, the moment that defines the game to me, there was like a one possession where UConn had, I think it was like 4 shots on offensive rebounds. And eventually it was Mullins who I think made the shot at the other end. It was just like, those are such backbreakers for you. You could probably also just in general, like refer to the different moments that KU had dry spells, but there were like 3 different long dry spells in this game. So it's hard to say exactly like which one you would pick. I mean, in the Kansas for the entire second half shot 5 of 20, 25%, 1 of 7 from 3-point range. They had just 2 offensive rebounds too. So you're not even getting like a bunch of rebounds while they're getting those extra possessions at their end. Stat of the game here has to be either the second half rebounding. I mean, again, I mentioned UConn 8 offensive rebounds in the second half, Kansas 8 defensive rebounds in the second half. That kind of swung the game for UConn, who was down and was able to get those extra possessions, extra shots, and they were able to take advantage, right? It wasn't a great shooting game for UConn either, but you end up launching up 8 more threes. You end up launching up 6 more field goal attempts in total, and that ends up being the difference in a 5-point game. I think you could probably also say the second half shooting in general. I mean, UConn at 44.8%, that's a solid number, especially against a good defense like Kansas. Kansas at 25%. That is obviously a pretty huge difference there. Our awards here, the token white guy going off on KU award, Braylon Mullins. It was meant to be. Braylon Mullins is a really good player. He's a top 20 recruit in the country, obviously. Still, at the same point in time, he was excellent tonight for UConn, right? And it's not like he had been, I mean, there was one other game for him. He made his debut against Illinois. He scored 2 points, had 2 rebounds on 1 of 5 in 10 minutes. So it was meant to be that he was going to have his breakout at Kansas. Always happens for the token white guy against Kansas. And then the night and day award will be to the KU bigs defensively. This was one positive for me. I noticed at one point, this was a possession in the early second half, just to finish with a little bit of a positive sprinkle here, where it's just night and day from maybe, the last couple of years for KU. So Alex Karaban catches it from 3-point range. He came in shooting 50% from 3. He's a really good player for UConn. And Flory ends up having to chase him off the 3-point line, but he also stays in front of him, so Karaban can't get by him. Having your center be able to do that, and then it gets passed to one of their small guards who's got Tiller switched onto him. And he can't get by Tiller, and he travels. And basically that was 2 big men for KU switched onto guards, or in Karaban's case, a forward, that were able to guard the 3-point line, stay in front of their guy, and force a turnover, essentially. And so the just night and day of having the ability of bigs who can get out is what makes Kansas such a dangerous defense for some of these really good offenses like UConn, who, is going to be putting up big point totals in a lot of games they play this year. Like this is a UConn offense who typically under Dan Hurley finishes as one of the best offenses in the country. Like last year, they were 15th. Year before that, they were 1st. Year before that, they were 3rd. Year before that, 22nd, 27th year before. So far this year, they're 17th, and that's even with them, shooting 34% from 3, which I think that number is going to rise as the season goes on. So point being, I just at least thought that was kind of a small little note and takeaway about what makes this Kansas defense, or what helps make this Kansas defense so strong so far this season. All right, let's finish up with game balls. What's next for KU? Thanks for joining us again on Locked On Jayhawks. Again, no Darryn Peterson in this one for KU, and you certainly missed him in this game. So I think the question becomes, will he play in the Missouri game, which is what's next for KU. Before we get to that, though, let's give out our game balls here. So I know it didn't go well for KU, but our offensive game ball, does it even feel right to give out an offensive game ball in a game like this? So Melvin Council actually led Kansas with 12 points, but just 4 of 13 from the field, continues to be a first half versus second half guy. I guess 2 of 7 versus 2 of 6, not that different. But he also had 4 free throw attempts in the second half, didn't in the first half. So Council, again, just by points would be in the discussion. He also had 3 assists, though he did have 3 turnovers, which is a high game for him. You could go with Flory by having 11, tied for second on the team. He didn't have any turnovers too, so that's helpful. But it wasn't a great offensive game for Flory. And this was kind of a game where when you're facing Eric Riba, who's a good player, but he's a freshman, this is one that you were hoping Flory was going to come in and kind of dominate with Taris Reed out. And that didn't really exactly happen. Now, Flory getting the 5 offensive rebounds was helpful for your offense, especially when you had more than half of the output for you. So I guess he's in discussion. I am going to go Elmarko Jackson. The 11 points, the lift off the bench, getting the crowd going in the first half for KU and continuing that in the second half, right? He had the big and one, which obviously the free throw was no good at the end, that, got you back within 1 possession before you got to stop, and then got the ball back with an opportunity to, at least tie the game, and it didn't work out with Jamari McDowell. But I thought Elmarko, I appreciated the aggressiveness to keep shooting, the aggressiveness to drive, things that we've wondered before. And so we'll give the offensive game ball to Elmarko Jackson. Again, not a lot of great candidates, though, on that one. Defensive game ball in this one. So you get 2 steals from Melvin Council. You get a couple blocks from Trey White, 2 from Flory Bidunga, 1 from Bryson Tiller. You also get a steal from Jamari McDowell and Jaden Dawson. Now, when I look at UConn, Silas Damari had just 2 points in this game. He came in averaging, double figures. I'm tempted to take the problem is that makes this difficult to be like, okay, this guy got locked down. Like Melvin Council was on him a bit and Jamari McDowell was on him a bit. KU switches so much that it's not exactly easy to say, oh, this guy just locked down this other guy. So I don't know. I guess we'll give it to I'm going to give it to Jamari McDowell. McDowell finishing with the 1 steal. Again, he was part of Damari kind of being down, and there were times where McDowell had to switch on to Eric Ryba. I think there's once or twice where Ryba scored over him, but I think he even got a stop or 2 on him as well. So I'm going to go with McDowell, and McDowell deserves credit as well because just going back to the Tennessee game, he was the main one drawing Jacoby Gillespie. There were times where it was Council. There's times where, again, KU switches and it's other players. But the main priority for Council was guarding Jacoby Gillespie, who was like 5 of 19. So we'll give McDowell the defensive game ball here. The overall game ball for KU, I guess we still will go with Flory Bidunga, 11 points, 12 rebounds, double-double, 2 blocks, no turnovers, played 37 minutes, had 4 fouls, so kind of was able to deal with that. And again, you wanted him to kind of dominate. It wasn't that. You wanted more offensively, but in the other areas, he did kind of dominate, and he did have some of those big rebounds when you were struggling to do it at least late in the game. He just needed more help, I think, on the glass in this game. Like, he got 12 rebounds. Trey White got 7, but nobody else on the team got more than 4. And I think that's where, okay, you'd like to see Tiller grab a couple extra rebounds, more than 4 in the 29 minutes. That's where, Cole Rosario not being in the Bill Self trust tree right now, he's supposed to be a good rebounder on the outside. That hurts you not having him. Darryn Peterson, who would be a bigger guard, it hurts you not having him on the glass. So I guess overall we'll give to Flory. So what is next for KU? We mentioned Missouri on Sunday. It's a noon game over at T-Mobile Center. Will Darryn Peterson be back? That's kind of the big question now. And I think it becomes more dire after seeing a performance like this. After seeing the second half that you put up against UConn offensively, it really becomes, oh, you need him back. Now, that doesn't mean that should influence your decision. If playing him on Sunday increases the risk of a re-injury, then he's not ready to come back yet. But I'll say this, if we don't see him back in this game or the NC State game, I'm just going to kind of assume you're not going to see him back until Big 12 play. And that would kind of make more sense, because if he's not going to play in these next 2 games, then you have Towson and Davidson after that. So like, okay, might as well just not play him for then. And then that gives you even more time off for the start of Big 12 play. The good thing is, if Peterson can go on Sunday against Missouri, he'll have a lot of time between games, right? You play Missouri on Sunday, then it's not till the following Saturday. You don't have another midweek game. Not till the following Saturday you'd be playing NC State. Then you would have that kind of shorter turnaround with the week game. But then you're getting closer to winter break. You have some extra days off. Then you have a longer time to Big 12 play. So I don't exactly know what's going on. It feels like there's a lot of rumors flying around. There's a lot of hearsay, which I think some of it is probably people just getting frustrated at this point in time. I still do believe we're going to see Darryn Peterson again for KU in a basketball game, and I'm excited for that moment. I'm hoping it's happening this Sunday against Missouri, but I'm also not going to expect it at this point, because this whole thing has been very weird. It's been very reminiscent of, remember like the Eric Berry injury where he was just like, oh, he's day-to-day. Oh, he's day-to-day. He's day-to-day. I don't know. That might be, if you're the younger part of the audience, like you might not remember. Just go look up like Eric Berry day-to-day. And he was day-to-day for like a full season. So I don't know. There's a rosy thought to finish out the episode. Anyway, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. We'll be back at you to talk a little KU football. We'll have a KU Missouri preview later in the week as well. This has been LOJ. Thanks for joining us anywhere you get your podcast, including on YouTube. See you next time.